Welcome and good morning. I am Peg Brightman, your service coordinator for today. Welcome to the North Universalist Chapel Society on this early spring day, April 10th, 2022. We at the North Chapel aspire to be a congregation that nurtures the growth and supports the needs of its members, sustains a strong spiritual life within a loving church community, and seeks to have a positive impact in the world around us. Impacted by 2 years of the pandemic, our service will be offered both live and on recorded video. So I want to welcome the friends who are joining us from a distance, as well as those of you here enjoying the beautiful bones of this gracious, spacious, old New England church. A special welcome to those of you who are visiting. If you'd like, you could stand and say who you are, where you're from. Anyone here like to do that brave thing? If you are visiting and don't want to do that, you can sign the guest book in the back of the sanctuary. Visitors not only can do that, but linger along with the rest of us after the service outside for conversation. Childcare is available. And now just a reminder to turn off cell phones and anything that might buzz or beep. Due to COVID, we will be humming rather than singing our hymns. For the announcements today, please check the order of service for current news about what is happening at the church. And I believe Richard Schramm has an announcement he'd like to make at this time.
Good morning. I have actually 3 announcements. I'll be as brief as I can be. The first is a group of David Doolittle's friends and family are planning a memorial service for this absolutely wonderful, loving human being. I think it's going to be tentatively June 11th, and we need some help with this. So if you could, and let me tell you who the group is, so you can go tell them what you're going to do to help. If you know David's son, Nick Doolittle, you go speak to Leon or Bob Williamson or Michael Stoner or Chris Bartlett or Ann and Joby, Chris Lloyd, I'm not sure, Diane perhaps, Mary Blanton, and me. We need help. If you have stories about David, you could write. We want to put stories together into a book. If you have photos, if you have artwork to contribute to a book, that would be great. If you want to help with the food at the reception afterwards, if you want to do ushering, if you want to, let's see what else you can do, flowers, you know what a service entails, and we would really need some help. So please think about what you can do to help and let some of us know. The second announcement is that in Hope Yeager's class, there are a couple of students who have some Ukraine connections, and they, with help from their parents, have prepared put together some buttons about Ukraine. And so we bought a bunch of buttons from them to support their Ukraine efforts, and we're reselling these buttons to you all in a basket back there, and any money that you can kick in for that will go to the UU Service Committee that does a lot of refuge work, including with Ukrainian refugees. And the third one is that someone just reminded me that next Sunday is Easter. I may be the last person that needs to be reminded, but if that's the case. And we're going to have Amazing Grays next Sunday, and I think that, just let you know, if you are an Amazing Grayer, that will probably reschedule it to the 24th. And that's it. Thank you very much.
It's hard to hear Don's voice and not imagine him singing, and it's like the way he holds his body and the grin on his face when he's singing. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. I believe that the good measure of our days resides in our ability to make healthiest decisions based on the information that we have access to in the here and now. 3 examples come to mind: the lesson of the muddy dog, the message of the larger church, and the value of the Long Beach Grand Prix, which happens today at 3:45 our time, 2:45 out west. Drivers, start your engines is announced at 12:38, so don't be late. How I know this might be surprising to you. Today is Sunday, April the 10th, and the title of this morning's reflection is The Measure of Our Days. Its theology is anchored in the book of Jeremiah in a passage that yielded the balm of Gilead. Its theology is anchored in Jeremiah, but its music comes from Nat King Cole, in part. The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I see your face in every flower, your eyes and stars above. It's just the thought of you, my love. It's also guided by the poetry of Tony Childs, who asks, where's the ocean? Where's the ocean? Where's the ocean for us and us? Do a little adjust here. Now, the good measure of our days truly resides in our ability to make these healthiest decisions. When do we get a chance to do that? When do we have moments to reflect? Sunset offers a moment of reflection, it seems to me. And I think that maybe sunset is our truest measure of our days, not by how many sunsets that we get to see, but how deeply we appreciate them. Sunset is a special time. The last light of the near star falls beyond the western horizon, and another day is done for all of us. Who can we be? Who must we be in order to know our beauty and to know our significance as the coming darkness settles, with the promise of tomorrow waiting in the wings? With what yardstick will we measure the sunset? How will we judge our time, our most basic inheritance? Sunset returns me to an attitude of prayer. It often returns me to an awareness of our collective soulfulness. Tracy Chapman wrote a song that I find myself singing at the sunset. Soundlessly, almost soundlessly, I find myself singing her words, her melody. Don't be tempted by the shining apple. Don't you eat of the bitter fruit. Hunger only for the days of justice. Hunger only for a world of truth, 'cause all that you have is your soul. Tracy and I went to school together, and I am jealous of her insanely for writing such a beautiful line as this. I find myself singing these words, and I'm glad, because I think that she's right. How could it be otherwise? All that we have is the soul. The value of life is not measured in the number of breaths we take, they say. It is measured in the times that life leaves us breathless. Blessings come! Do you remember this story? Have I shared it with you? This story was shared with me by a minister named Bill Clark, who serves the UU Church in Provincetown. He talked about how powerfully and how truly and how honestly we claim our faith. He talked about his own practice, his own prayer practice, yoga and meditation. He talked about his connection with nature. And he told me a story about how he was walking in the woods one time, reflecting on his faith practice when he came upon a wide open field, an open grassy field of flowers, and there was a woman standing in the center of it all by herself. And at the top of her lungs, she was screaming, blessings come. And Bill was jealous. If I remember the story right. He was jealous that this woman was proclaiming and claiming her faith so passionately. There would be a period of silence, and then he would hear her faith claim resound again. Blessings, come! And Bill didn't know what faith she practiced, but it caused him to ask reflectively, what would it mean for us, for we Unitarian Universalists, to claim our faith this passionately? This is a great part of the story for us to share an awareness that this is our 4th month of reflecting on the Unitarian principles, the 7 principles, now 8 principles of Unitarian Universalism. The 4th principle for the month of April is the one that encourages us to engage in the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Can there be a freer search than wandering into the wilderness, seeking the holy and demanding its presence? Can there be a more responsible search? The woman in this wide open meadow wasn't imposing on anyone. It was Jesus of Nazareth who encouraged us to heal the sick and feed the hungry and care for the weakest among us and always pray in private. Even though she was outside, she was still alone. Can there be a better example of the free and responsible search for truth and meaning than this woman in the meadow? Now, it's important for me to raise that question at this point in the story before the story concludes, while the story's energy is still aspirational and romantic. For Bill's story concludes with a twist. Amid this juicy musing about the nature of our faith and how passionately we claim it, amid his deep reflection about the claims we have on Unitarian Universalism, something happened, something delightful happened. Upon the 3rd and final faith claim of the woman in the open meadow came a 90-pound and playful golden retriever from the woods, for whom the woman had been searching. Blessings was the name of her dog, her faithful companion, as it were. I love that dog story, and it leads me straight into another one. When I lived in North Carolina, I attended a traditional church. It was called the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, or more affectionately, ERUF. I also attended an experimental UU church that was led by the Reverend Chester McCall. That church was called All Souls, and it was tiny and unassuming. In fact, we met in the local YMCA in one of the children's classrooms. It was unassuming, but there still was a formality to it. It had a rigor. One bright summer morning, I was preparing to go, and I was dressed well enough. I had my nice shorts on, a nice shirt, my best shorts, in fact. I tried to make myself look pretty. I took Samori for a walk before I left, because that's how we were. Samori was my yellow Labrador retriever. When we would often go on walks before we went to church, Samori was my blessing. She was beautiful and perfect, and she was an amazing friend to me. Anyway, that particular Sunday morning, she jumped in a puddle of mud. And then she looked up at me, surprised and proud of herself, as if to say, "Hey, Leon, look what happens if I jump in a big puddle of mud." She did that all her life, every time. It seemed to amaze her. And I knew I wouldn't have time to clean up before I was going to go to church, but that wasn't a problem. I would just leave her in the fenced-in backyard, and I'd be gone for an hour or two. She'd be fine. It was time to go, so I called her, and she came immediately on my command. I turned toward the house, and I knew that she would follow, and she did. In fact, she always raced me there. This time, as she raced by, the path was particularly narrow, and she bumped into me as she was passing, and she left my right leg caked in mud. She ruined the outfit that I was wearing. I'm sure that I cursed out loud. I was angry at my dog. She looked back at me, proud of herself. as if saying, hey Leon, look what happens if I rub into you when I'm full of mud. I was brokenhearted. I knew that I couldn't go to church, and I really wanted to. And then I thought to myself, of course I can. Samori is a blessing in my life. Life is happening right now, and as it turns out, today's life is muddy. So I did go to church, and I told that story at the morning check-in, and I was deeply uncomfortable, but it turned out to be an amazing day. It was amazing what we find when we allow ourselves to wander, at the world. Now, I've been amazed by how terribly the roads have been this mud season. It has left me breathless, some of you as well, perhaps, and I wonder if we get credit for that. I was breathless, for sure, driving on the dirt roads this year, toughest in a generation, I hear. I was surely terrified driving in all of that quicksand, swallowing up my tires, mud cake full up to the shoulders of my all-wheel drive vehicle. Despite its power, I really thought that I might slide off the side of the road and wind up in a gully and be stuck there all night, sinking further and further down until the following morning. Or worse, I thought I might spin my knobby tires in desperation, sinking my car so deeply into the trenches that the undercarriage would come to rest right there in the middle of the road, blocking through traffic for everyone in the area. If the measure of life is truly valued in the number of times that life leaves us breathless, then the value of my life has increased sevenfold in the past 6 weeks. It takes your breath away sometimes to drive through all that mud. The roads are so much better now. They've improved since I left town. I was away this week. I went out west to a conference in California. I just got back from Long Beach, and I'm actually still jet lagged. It was a very long trip home, and I'm no longer used to traveling. The conference that I went to ended with a 2-hour closing ceremony. It was supposed to last until 11 o'clock California time. I would head to the airport soon after that, but I got restless because the conference schedule had been so busy that I had not made it to the ocean. Long Beach, California is about 20 miles south of Los Angeles. I went there to attend this yearly conference called Finding Our Way Home. It is a retreat for religious professionals of color. It was a working retreat with an emphasis on the word working. We were free to skip out on anything that we chose, but few of us ever did. The conference was quite moving. It was very different from Ministry Days, which is the conference for ministers that precedes General Assembly every year. And it was different from the regional gathering of ministers that I appreciate so much. This was a gathering of religious professionals, not just ministers. I love the work that ministers do when we gather, rank by rank. But being with religious professionals of all stripes was much more interesting. We did not sing rank by rank, which is a favorite among ministers at this conference. We sang many songs, but we did not sing this one. We sang songs that would bring blessings. We brought heaven down to earth. We asked heaven to touch the earth, and it did. It was beautiful being there. I was very appreciative right up to the closing ceremony, but I got restless because I had not touched the ocean, and I was so close. So I set out to touch the sea. It was just about a mile away, so I figured I could walk, but I was wrong. And probably you would never guess in a million years the reason why. I thought that I could walk to the ocean. I could see it from the hotel. I thought that I could walk there, but I was wrong because race cars were in my way. Indy cars and Formula One cars were all over the place. This weekend, right now in fact, is the Acura Grand Prix in Long Beach, California. And I never knew what a colossally big event a Grand Prix actually is. The racetrack went actually right around the hotel in which we were staying. The streets were lined with concrete barriers and heavy metal fencing for safety. I stole my way back into the staging area where the race car drivers and their crews went to work. I thought that maybe I could find a way through to the water, but I was wrong. I went through a bunch of security checkpoints and I just smiled confidently, you know. No one gave me any trouble. I was just pretending that I knew what I was doing, and I'm quite sure that they really didn't care. They were screening for westbound fast car thrill seekers and not for me. I was an East Coast ocean-seeking liberal faith minister. I think that they knew that I didn't pose a threat. When our eyes met, I thought to ask them, inspired by the poetry of Tony Childs, where's the ocean? Where's the ocean? But all they could do was point. They knew exactly what I was up against. I tried my best to get to the sea, but I just couldn't make it happen, not through the concrete and the metal of the automotive maze. In my last attempt, when I was trying my hardest, I was cutting behind an industrial lighting station when I slammed my shin into a heavy metal strut that supported the heavy equipment. It was very painful. It was 92 degrees. I was dressed for 53. I couldn't figure out how to get past the concrete barriers and the metal fencing that stood between me and the sea. When I hurt my leg, I just figured it was a sign, and I went back to the hotel and I caught the end of the closing ceremony, in which we remembered that many of us had died in the 2 years since last we gathered. 7 of us, actually. Among them were Reverend Hope Johnson, who I admired very deeply. Alandria Williams from Knoxville, Tennessee. She was fairly young when she died. And my friend from North Carolina, the Reverend Chester McCall, from the All Souls Church, the one that met in the YMCA in one of the children's classrooms. As the conference was ending, I gathered up their memories and I took their stories with me as I left. I checked out of my room, I made arrangements to get to the airport, and then I got the news. It had happened. The news that I had been waiting for had come. Melinda Yalom, my dear friend of 5 years from Silver Spring, Maryland, she texted me the breakdown. It was a very simple message. She wrote this: finally, dash, it's done, double exclamation point. 53, 47, triple exclamation point. I'm so glad, triple exclamation point. That was all I needed. And right away I sat down and I started to write a letter that I had been thinking about writing for a couple of weeks. And I wrote this: Dear Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, thank you for your grace. Thank you for your composure and for your grounded integrity. Thank you for your dignity in the face of such bitterness. What measure of strength is required of a woman these days? To suffer fools, to put up with pretenses and grandstanding, to endure the attitudes and the platitudes of well-dressed men and their anxiety. I wish that my dog Samori could bless them all with cakes of mud. Good heavens, and thank God for you. Thank God for who you are. Let them go if you can. It's so exasperating, but their anxiety does not belong to you. I'm sure that you know this already. But maybe it was for moments such as these that William Shakespeare wrote the sonnet. Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever. One foot in sea and one on shore, to one thing constant never. So sigh not so, but let them go, and be you blithe and bonny, converting all your sounds of woe to hey, nani, nani. He wrote, sing no more ditties, sing no more of dumps so dull and heavy. The fraud of men was ever so, since summer first was leafy. So sigh not so, but let them go and be you blithe and bonny. Oh, I wish you such lightness of spirit on this good day. I send you buoyancy, such joy, such hopefulness. May nothing bring you low, because we need you now. Gravity forever wants to bring us down, but grace resists, and so we rise. The morning sun still rises over us and within us. Thank God that it does. We need the light and the darkness that follows. These two things are linked. We need the power of the rising sun to love our way into the morning. We need the beauty of the sunset to measure our days. Through wound and weakness, we rise to heal the sin-sick world. What measure of strength is required of a woman like you these days? What must she take? How long must she endure, now that the walls that once contained her are finally fallen to the ground? Now that the ceiling glass that kept her from her heights has been shattered. I'm not surprised that some men are anxious at the very thought of you. Some men are anxious, but not all. Not Senator Durbin, not Senator Booker, not Senator Romney. He's doing such good work for his party right now, joining Senator Collins from Maine and Senator Murkowski from Alaska. He is doing good work for men. Those three crossed the aisle. The three of them together, they voted for you, and so did I, and so did we, so many of us across the country, from our hearts. From so many different backgrounds we voted, and my mother voted for you too. And my dear father, he would have been so thrilled. Back in 2008, Barack Obama was elected. I was living in St. Paul at the time. I watched the news. I was at an election party that was supposed to go on all night, but it didn't because the results came in rather quickly. I made a phone call that night. I called my dad. He was at home with my mom in New Jersey. I was sort of in disbelief somehow. I didn't know that I would feel that way, not until it happened. For all of my spiritual optimism, there was a part of me, surprisingly, that did not expect to see an African-American president in my lifetime. Most of me did, but there was part of me that didn't. Did I think it was possible? Yes. Truly, I knew that it was. Did I hope to see it? Yes. But did I expect to see an African-American president? I wasn't so sure about that. And I didn't know that I wasn't so sure until I heard the breaking news in early November back in 2008. So I called my dad in disbelief, and we didn't say anything on the call, not after we exchanged hellos. We just sat there on the phone with one another, not saying anything at all. The two of us just sat there in our silence and in our wonder. And then after a while, we said our goodbyes. And then we went on with our days. I wish my dad were alive today so that I could call him up on the phone right now and we could exchange hellos again. Hey, LD, I can hear him saying to me. And then we could sit there on the phone, not saying anything. Both of us could just sit there in our silence and wonder. This is such a tricky moment in the world. With the ongoing war in Ukraine, the attacks on Roe v. Wade, the attacks on critical thinking and how we theorize about race, the attacks on who we are as sexual beings. And all of this, of course, in the context of the baseline and growing dangers of climate change. Things are really complicated in our little world turned upside down. How do we make sense of all of this? What yardstick can we use? What scale? What probe? What measuring tape can we use to size this ocean? I was at a conference this week that took place in Long Beach, California. It was a gathering of religious professionals of color from all over the country. And Susan Frederick Gray was there. She is the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Rosemary Bray McNatt was there. She's the president of the Starr King School for the Ministry. And Elias Ortega was there. He is the president of the Meadville Lombard Theological School, our seminary in Chicago. Elias and I were having lunch at the hotel as the auto racing crowd was gathering. It was an odd mixture of Unitarian Universalist professionals of color and Grand Prix race car types. Doug came over to our table. Doug was deeply in the mix of auto racing. That was clear. His passion was obvious. He was also deeply in the mix of mixed drinks in the afternoon. That was clearly another of his passions. Reverend Dr. Elias and I were talking about this tricky moment in the world when Doug arrived and joined us uninvited. Sat down at our table. He was pretty drunk at the time, fairly crazy with all of the Grand Prix energy, but the tenderness of his spirit was so obvious. Our conversation did not go so well. It was very awkward. We just didn't have the kind of time that we needed to explore that kind of connection. It was a singular moment. I suspect that I will never again be sitting with the president of a Unitarian Universalist seminary contemplating the great crises of our world and be approached by a passion-crazed, saucy Formula One enthusiast near the beach in Southern California. But as we try to take stock of our lives, as we strive to measure our days, should we not bear witness to the abundance of life that is available to us? I could not get to the ocean, but the ocean came to me. Elias Ortega brought me there, as did Doug, the auto enthusiast with his habits for midday drinks. And Rosemary did, and Susan, and the security guards in the staging area, and Hope Johnson and Alondria Williams and Chester McCall, who passed away. And Samori brought the ocean to me, my beautiful and perfect yellow Labrador retriever, and Blessings did, carried me there through the story that Bill Clark shared with me years ago. All of these together taught me the lesson of the muddy dog, brought me the message of the larger church, and showed me the value of the Grand Prix at Long Beach, which happens today at 3:45. Drivers, start your engines, because life is happening right now. Perhaps our days are measured by how aware we are of all of this, measured by how mindful we are of the blessed here and now. Where is the ocean for us and us? The ocean's here. The ocean's here. Perhaps the ocean of our awareness is all the balm we need. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.